What's going on, everybody? JD here, and you know what? Today we're going to get started with photography. Roll intro. Alright guys, let's get started. I'm going to dive right off into the biggest misconception about photography and getting started with it. That misconception is that you need amazing gear. Let me make this point very clear, very point blank, as blunt as I could possibly be about it. The gear doesn't matter.
What?
You could have the latest greatest $5,000 camera, but if you don't understand the concepts of photography, if what's up here doesn't match the level of gear you've got, if you don't know how to compose a photo or properly expose a photo and all these other things that really matter, you're going to take awful pictures. If you can't take a great picture with your cell phone, if you don't know how to compose a photo, look at the lighting, so on and so forth, it's going to be awful. And quite frankly, nowadays there's such a range of gear available, anywhere from what you get with your contract on your cell phone all the way up to, you know, red cameras and all these crazy cameras that cost so much, that there's this wide range that you could fall into depending on what you're trying to do and what your skill level is. But I'll tell you right now, in what we're talking about today, getting started with photography, you need to use what you've got. Don't go out and spend $5,000 on a Canon 5D Mark IV and an amazing lens for it when you haven't spent the time just to figure out how to take good pictures in the first place. It's going to be even more difficult with a camera of that level, which you have to understand what you're doing with it to take good photography if you can't just do it with a point and shoot like your phone or a regular cheap point and shoot camera. So that's going to be my number one suggestion, is just to use what you've got. Study up, learn the principles of photography so that you can go and create good imagery no matter what you've got in your hands. Now, breaking it down into the principles that you need to understand to be a good photographer, to create good imagery, I'm going to break it down into 3 points, and and I'm looking at my notes here, so if you see me looking out and back, there's a lot to talk about, and I don't want to miss anything. But there's 3 concepts you truly need to understand, and that's how to expose a photo, composition, and lighting. Those 3 things make or break your photos. First being the exposure triangle, how to expose your photos. There's 3 parts with a DSLR or any kind of camera that allows you to adjust settings on it and expose a photo properly. You've got your ISO, or the sensitivity of your sensor, shutter speed, which a slower shutter speed allows more light, a faster shutter speed allows less light, and aperture. How big or closed your aperture is will affect not only your depth of field, but how much light is getting in the lens. You need to understand those 3 principles of exposure alone just to properly expose photos and get the depth of field you're looking for when you start shooting with a nicer camera. The next thing I'm going to talk about is composition. Composition is pretty much how you structure your image, how your elements sit within your image, your horizon line, whether you've got your subject up close and a background that's blurry, a little bit like what I've got going on here in this shot for video, the angle at which you're shooting from, how your image reads, whether it reads from left or right, or if it's got leading lines that lead you from one part of the image and guide your eyes across to look at your subject in a different part. There's so many principles to proper composition that I can't really go over it right here in just this little video, but I think that at least studying composition and getting your basics like your rule of thirds and the golden triangle or Fibonacci circle, the golden rule, they've got I've got a link that I'll share in a later video that's got over 20 different examples of composition and how you can use composition to make your images read differently. And last but not least, light. You need to understand light. In this particular shot, I've got a key light lighting my face. I've got background lights. I'm looking in the screen and putting my hand on one. There's a background light there and there's an overhead light, so I'm doing stuff with lighting. If I just turn off one of them, the shot gets awful real quick. Now you can't see my face and the detail in my face just because I've turned off my key light. And this thing's a stupid old lamp without the shade on it. But you can see the difference it makes in just the way this video is composed and how the image that you're seeing, because video is just a collection of images, plays moving pictures. Let's just be real about it. Anyway, your lighting makes a huge difference in how that works. So that's your three things that you really need to understand before you dive off and spend a bunch of money on a camera: is how to properly expose your photo, how to compose the photo so it reads properly and looks like an image, not a snapshot that you happen to capture, and then the lighting, how to properly light your images so you create the mood, the atmosphere, and the ambience you're looking for in those images. That's when photography turns from a photo into artwork. And if you're being a photographer, you're looking at creating art, not just pictures. Anybody can take a picture. Anyway, let's move on to the next part. Last but not least, and this is going to sound corny, cliche, whatever you want to call it, but just start shooting. You're not going to get better until you practice. You're not going to get better until you go out and do it. So I guess if you take everything that I've put together in this video so far, is get your freaking cell phone, go out somewhere pretty, or somewhere that interests you. If you want to shoot cars, go to a car show. If you want to shoot landscapes, go to a state park, or stand out in your backyard and look for landscapes. If you want to shoot product photography or macro photography, go start trying. Figure it out. You know, the internet is full of resources, just like the YouTube video you're watching where I'm telling you how to do this. There's just as many resources that specify and break it down into how do you shoot a picture of your thumbnail or whatever. You get what I'm saying, is that, you know, you have to get started doing it. You know, go find some resources, and there'll be more resources on my channel where I'm sharing how to properly expose a photo and composition of light. I'm going to talk about all these principles in later videos because I want to expand upon the series. But what I'm getting at is that you need to do it. You need to, a basketball player doesn't get good by, you know, just, I'm going to show up and play the national championship game. No, they've done it for years. They've shot from the three-point line at various angles hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times, so they now have muscle memory and can do this stuff off the cuff without thinking about it every time. And photography is the same way. You're not going to get amazing shots without developing the skill set, without developing the muscle memory, without developing all the tools that you need, be it just in your hands and the familiarity with your equipment to be able to shoot consistently each and every single time. So with that being said, just get out there and shoot. And that about wraps it up for this video, guys. Like I said, I'm going to make videos following this one up that talk about the principles I'm talking about, the how to expose your photo, how to compose your photo, and how to properly light your photo. We'll talk more about gear. I'll tell you what I'm shooting on, which is nothing too crazy. It doesn't really take anything crazy to make good photography, as long as you spend the time studying the tools, studying the or developing your skill set. Let me say it appropriately or properly, and I'll share those resources as we get there. So guys, stay tuned, like, comment, subscribe if you dug what we talked about here, and stay tuned for the videos that I've got coming, because I am going to break these principles down and share as best as I possibly can, so that you guys can grow with me. I'd love to, if you've already been shooting, I'd love to see what you guys have been shooting. Share links in the comments and I'll check it out. Anyway, guys, have a great day. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.